What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to the True Mets Talk podcast. And happy day one of MLB free agency as the clock strikes 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. MLB free agency begins. And in honor of that, we have this episode talking about some names in terms of free agent targets that the Mets should be prioritizing, in my opinion, this coming off season. Before we get into this video, make sure you go ahead and hit the thumbs up before we talk about these bullpen names. Subscribe to the channel for more Mets offseason content. I got you all with the latest news, updates, reactions, and more right on this channel. And make sure you make your feelings and thoughts known in the comment section about the current status of this bullpen and any names that we may or may not talk about. Before we get into those names, we do have some news here relating to another bullpen arm, and that is Phil Maton. The Mets have officially, if you missed it, declined the option on the 2025 contract year of Phil Maton. It was valued to be around $7.75 million. They are now going to pay that $250,000 buyout fee, and he is set to become an unrestricted free agent. For those of y'all who don't know, some of the Mets talk that we've done in season in 2024, I wasn't the biggest Phil Maton fan, especially when the playoffs rolled around. He hit a wall, posting an 8.44 ERA, which is presumably, probably a heavy factor in terms of why the Mets declined his option, because he was great in the regular season for the Mets once he came over, and I won't take that away from him. But now he's set to become an unrestricted free agent for any MLB team to sign, and the Mets have to make a decision on him and the rest of this list that you see here to the right: Ryan Stanek, Brooks Raley, Drew Smith, and all the way down. The Mets have to decide whether they retain these guys or not. And Phil Maton obviously is still eligible to come back to the Mets. Presumably, if he does, you would think it'd be for maybe a one-year deal worth less than that $7.75 million that the Mets declined. We saw something similar happen with Adam Ottavino, although that was a player option, a little bit different, but the same sort of, I guess, scenario. Same sort of framework, I should say. I wouldn't expect for it to happen, but I will say with the names that I have on this list, two of them are re-sign candidates. So let's start with that. And this is a direct sort of piggyback off of one of my live streams that I did just about a week ago, where I talked about the internal Mets free agents. And I mentioned these two guys specifically, and that I would be interested in retaining them for 2025 on one-year deals, should they accept it. Brooks Raley and Ryan Stanek, I think it's pretty self-explanatory in terms of looking at the production value of Brooks Raley, what he got you and gave you in 2023, posting a 2.80 ERA in just about 54 innings. And obviously we know the injury concern with his arm that sidelined him for most of the 2024 season was on a great trajectory over 7 innings pitched in 2024 in the month of April, posting a 0.00 ERA. But obviously the injury bug got him, and he is now looking for a contract. And I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of suitors out there, because lefties, particularly in the bullpen, always draw a lot of interest. But if you're able to re-sign Brooks Raley anywhere close to this 1 year, $2.4 million valuation, I would certainly think about that if I'm David Stearns. Next is Ryan Stanek. The last 2 years in terms of production on paper hasn't been anywhere close to what he produced in 2022 in that career year that he had with the Astros. But when I take a look at just the stuff that Ryan Stanek has, the electricity on his fastball, 99 to 100 miles per hour, the nastiness in terms of the movement on that split finger fastball that he gets a lot of swing and miss with, a full season sample size of Ryan Stanek in the Mets organization, working with Mendoza, working with Jeremy Hefner, I really think it could do wonders. And let's face it, right? He needed some time in terms of getting comfortable to whatever role he was designated in from Carlos Mendoza, right? We saw him in 7th innings. We saw him in 8th innings. And depending on how Mendoza was utilizing Edwin Diaz on a given day, we saw him also closing out ball games in 9th innings. And I think that versatility could also play a big factor in terms of what he could provide the 2025 Mets bullpen. So there you have it, Ryan Stanek and Brooks Raley. Obviously, if you paid attention to the stream before, I'll link it in the description down below. If you missed that, if you're a new subscriber, or if you just simply missed it, I talked about these guys. Those are my re-sign candidates and 2 of the 5 names that I am throwing out there in this video. Next, right, if the Mets don't want to prioritize re-signing Stanek or a Brooks Raley, right, you can go out there in the free agent market and sign guys for similar production values, maybe if not a little bit better. When you take a look at David Robertson versus Ryan Stanek. Now, obviously, David Robertson doesn't have this type of explosion on his fastball or cutter, right, where he throws primarily, as Ryan Stanek does, but he is a serviceable veteran. And this is a guy that I definitely wanted to see back in a Mets uniform this past offseason. Obviously, he was a Texas Ranger, and you see the production value. He's approaching 40 years old, which a lot of people want to knock him for, but he still threw 72 innings. And he did pretty damn good at that across those 72 innings, posting a 3.00 ERA. This is a guy that, right, this past offseason, I thought him and Edwin Diaz could have been a tremendous 1-2 tandem in the 8th and 9th innings. And guess what? This opportunity, the opportunity to have that tandem now represents itself. And David Robertson should definitely be on the mind of David Stearns in terms of having that and building that elite back into the bullpen. And what is my favorite probably candidate, a more of a low-key type of candidate as far as lefties goes that are available, is AJ Minter. He has had a proven successful track record with the Atlanta Braves organization, and it's kind of curious to me if they're going to re-sign him or not. I know he was dealing with a hip injury that he kind of prolonged or delayed getting surgery for this past season. It was a successful surgery, and he's rehabbing this offseason. I think he should be ready from what I'm hearing at the beginning of the 2025 season, if not maybe a month in. He also has an electric fastball. And I think that, again, if you want to run a 2 lefty tandem in your bullpen alongside Danny Young, and you're kind of wary about the arm injury and how Brooks Raley will recover, well, for the right price, AJ Minter on a 2-year, $12 million deal would certainly fit the bill. And you see here in 2024, I know there's some asterisks there because he only pitched in 34 innings, but a 2.62 ERA, just over a 1.00 whip. This guy's pitched in really big ball games and could provide that versatility and experience to a 2025 Mets bullpen. So be on the lookout for AJ Minter, and you wouldn't have to break the bank the same way you would for a guy like Tanner Scott. Well, I'll get into in this slide right here. Before I get into a guy like Tanner Scott, right, the 5th name in terms of a free agent target that I have for the Mets in the bullpen category is Tommy Kenley. Last 2 seasons with the New York Yankees, great production, right? You see here just over 40 innings pitched in both years, 2.66 ERA in 2023 and a 2.11 ERA in 2024, respectively. He's also pitched in some big ball games, but the changeup, right? That changeup that he throws for about 60 to 70% of the time, lots of swing and miss. The walks are definitely an issue, and I know a lot of Mets fans are kind of wary about bringing in guys. The same thing can be said for Ryan Stanek that have walk issues. But again, do you believe in Jeremy Hefner the way that this Mets organization does? You bring in these guys that have the tool sets like Ryan Stanek does and like Tommy Kenley does, and great things can happen. Now, again, I know that, a lot of other Mets podcasts, beat reporters, beat writers, etc., are going to talk about the big fishes in the pond. Guys like Tanner Scott, Clay Holmes, Carlos Estevez, etc. Guys that are really in line for 3, 4, maybe even 5-year deals. And knowing David Stearns and his track record and the way that he builds his bullpens, I could talk about these guys all day long as well, because they also have proven successes in the last couple of seasons of their careers, especially a guy like Tanner Scott, who was tremendous in 2023 and 2024. But do we really think David Stearns, with what we've seen over the past couple of years and how he's built his bullpens is going to dish out 4-year deals worth 13, 14, 15, $16 million for these top of the line bullpen arms, I'd be a little bit weary about that. But again, if they're there for the taking and David Stearns wants to make a big splash to have an elite 1-2 combo, I'm kind of uncertain that Tanner Scott's going to want to go to a situation where he doesn't close, but you never know. But I wanted to give you all realistic options, right? Because I think that 4 years for about $13, $14 million is unrealistic in terms of what Spotrac is valuating Clay Holmes' next contract to be. And Tanner Scott even more so at 4 years, around $17 million. So it's great to talk about these guys potentially being in play. But when you talk about Tommy Kenley, talk about obviously the re-signings potentially of Ryan Stanek, Brooks Raley, maybe even an AJ Minter on a team-friendly contract. David Robertson, who I know is up there in age, but will take a 1-year deal. That's the line of thinking that I am prioritizing in this offseason for the bullpen and the route that David Stearns is going to take to build onto what was a pretty decent bullpen, I will say, all in all, with the amount of turnover that it had, and to the returning guys in that bullpen like Edwin Diaz, Reed Garrett, Jose Buto, and Danny Young. A good foundation, but the names in this video will take it from a good foundation to a good solidified bullpen in 2025 and beyond. Let me know what you think. Hit the thumbs up on this video. Subscribe to the channel. Again, I got you all offseason long with Mets content. Hit the comment section. Let me know about the names. What do you think? Yes or no? And who else would you put on these lists in terms of bullpen options for the New York Mets? Appreciate you all. See you all on the next stream. Let's go Mets.
Thank you for watching the True Mets Talk podcast. Make sure you're tapping on that notifications button and checking out all the latest content on the channel. Thank you.